The FIA's involvement in Zandvoort was quite obvious, as severe penalties were dealt to drivers for crashes that didn't look to be very harsh. Nevertheless, it raises a question as to whether the governing body might want to let the drivers race in a more aggressive manner, precisely what the fans are waiting for. On top of that, the consistency of these penalties was brought up yet again. So was the FIA in the right to penalise one situation but keep its eyes closed for another one? And more importantly, does the inconsistency of the FIA hurt the drivers' confidence when it comes to racing? The Zandvoort GP went through some interesting development of events, primarily when it comes to the crashes and the FIA's involvement in it. It all started with Liam Lawson and Carlos Sainz's crash. Although the Spaniard was to be blamed for the incident, a 10-second penalty and 2 penalty points on his super licence might be a bit too harsh of a verdict. After all, it's not like he committed to the corner in an aggressive manner or wanted to push Lawson out. He was behind the Racing Bulls car, but not in a way that would provoke a crash. That's the feeling from Sainz as well. The Williams driver has no idea how the FIA stewards looked at the footage and decided that he is at fault for what happened in Turn 1. Elaborating further on this, Carlos said, "I suffered an incident that cost me another 10 points in the championship when I was executing one of my best weekends of the year." That's frustration number 1. Frustration number 2 is racing a guy like that. It's not the first time that we see him exposing himself to having an incident with another driver, just to make sure there's not even a side-by-side action or a side-by-side movement. I'm planning to talk to both the stewards and Lawson. It's very frustrating and very disappointing. I would rather do it with some piece of video in front of me. I've already reviewed it myself, and I've seen what I had to see. But the most confusing part is the FIA always tells us that the doors are open to go and see the stewards and to consult any kind of doubts. But if you were to open the rulebook, you'd understand why the FIA kept so close to their standards. While we can be angry and disgruntled towards the stewards penalising such behaviour from Sainz, at the end of the day, we need to understand that if they let one incident slip through their hands, they will receive a contrary backlash to what they're receiving right now. In their official debrief, the stewards noted that Sainz was predominantly to blame for the collision, and they just followed the rules and applied the standard penalty for what happened. Elaborating further on this incident in their debrief, the stewards wrote, "Car 55 was attempting to overtake car 30 on the outside of turn 1. The front axle of car 55 was not ahead of the front axle of car 30 at the apex of turn 1. Car 55 attempted to stay on the outside of car 30 and a collision occurred. We considered that car 30 had the right to the corner and therefore car 55 was wholly or predominantly to blame for the collision. As is standard for a collision of this nature and as prescribed under the guidelines, we imposed a 10-second penalty time on car 55. This isn't the only thing that made F1 drivers and fans angry, however. Let's not forget about the overtake of Leclerc on Russell. While it was made in a very aggressive manner, it reminded us as to why Charles is one of the best wheel-to-wheel racers on the grid. Nevertheless, many felt like he went off the track and gained an advantage in an unfair manner, something for which he was investigated after the race. Again, the fact that the FIA involved themselves here is kind of head-scratching, because while the overtake itself was borderline dangerous, it's a clear reminder as to where F1 should move with the racing manoeuvres allowance. According to the stewards, this racing incident wasn't actually good enough to be investigated during the race, and that itself should be a problem, because neither Leclerc nor Russell knew whether they were in the clear to push or play it safe throughout the race. Yes, Leclerc retired after the incident with Antonelli, one that we'll discuss later in this video, and Russell had limitations due to the damage to his car. Either way, this is the worst thing that the drivers can experience, not knowing their fate throughout the event. After the race, both Leclerc and Russell were summoned by the stewards. They had a clear verdict. Both drivers felt that this was a racing incident and that there should be no further consequence to either driver for the incident. Maybe they didn't have a lot of video evidence at that time, but nevertheless, the fact that the stewards involved themselves while Wolff said that he didn't want Leclerc to receive a penalty for this incident ahead of Ferrari's home GP speaks volumes of the discrepancy. Adding further to this, Wolff said, "I'm looking at this incident from the global picture. After the race, we don't want to have Charles having a grid penalty for Monza because of the way he lost this race with one of our cars. On the other side, I don't think that it was an overtaking spot on the left side. You can try to squeeze, but that's never going to go. And in that sense, I would rather say that was Charles's fault. The FIA's penalties didn't end here. Lewis Hamilton received a 5-second penalty as well for failing to slow under double yellows. Again, it's following the rule book and applying penalties as they go, but the painful fact is that Hamilton didn't finish the race, meaning that he'll serve this penalty at the Monza Grand Prix. The most important factor for the stewards in this scenario was the nature of the track. As the stewards said, due to the nature of the track, the race director had informed all participants that the last corner before the pit lane would have double yellow flags waved. This was to ensure the safety of those on the grid and in the pit lane. The regulations require that any driver passing through a double-waved yellow flag marshalling sector reduce speed significantly. We looked through the available telemetry within the FIA system. We also requested the team to provide us with their telemetry data. All of this took some time, and this decision was delayed as a result. The data showed that the driver had entered the double yellow sector approximately 20 km per hour, less than his speed at the same point in practice sessions. So, the stewards didn't consider that 20 km per hour was enough to be considered significantly slowing down. To further top that off, Hamilton received 2 points on his super license, which are the first of his current 12-month period. Another record was broken here by the 7-time world champion, apart from the infamous 15-race podium-less streak with Ferrari. It's the first time after 51 consecutive race weekends that he was penalised on his super licence. 4 other drivers were involved in investigation regarding failing to adhere to the maximum time limit between the safety car lines during their reconnaissance laps. Norris, Sainz, Hulkenberg and Verstappen were all found to have driven too slowly, but in each of these cases, the stewards ruled they didn't do so in an unnecessary manner, having slowed down to let others pass. Be that as it may, the FIA finds itself in a very difficult position right now. The stewards have been vastly criticised by Carlos Sainz, who is still in disbelief as to how he was the one to blame for what happened between him and Lawson. A lot would have to change in the following period, because if the FIA sticks to its rule book, they would have to keep up the consistency and not turn a blind eye to certain incidents. Yes, they reviewed the one with Leclerc and Russell, noting that the Monegasque entered in a very aggressive manner, but at the end of the day, with Russell's car being damaged for the remainder of the race, was this verdict right? We're experiencing peak racing here, and I would much rather have this instead of those super careful approaches. But the FIA needs to draw a line and give their final say on what would be penalised and what wouldn't. With all this in mind, what do you think about all of the criticism that's being shot towards the FIA and the stewards? And more importantly, do you think that something will change in the following races? Let us know in the comments below, and once you do that, make sure to click on the video that appears on your screen right now.